Okay, so Highlander. I'm not a fan. Now, hold on before you all go after me, before you all attack me, let me stress a few things. Firstly, all of this is from my perspective and my vantage point. I'm going to explain to you guys as best as I can why I'm not a fan of Highlander, and you guys do with that what you will. Please don't destroy me in the comments section. And two, if you enjoy Highlander, that's awesome. I'm actually really glad you enjoy them. I just don't enjoy them. I'm not a big fan of Highlander, okay? All right, so just hear me out. Let me explain myself. When Highlander first came out, I was actually a fan. I actually thought Highlander looked cool, seemed cool. I thought that there was a lot that I would really enjoy about them. From a lore perspective, since you know that's kind of my bread and butter, I thought that, oh man, this is awesome. You got these northern savage warriors who lived off the elements and turned them into these big, burly muscle men who use massive swords, and they have a begrudging alliance with the Vikings. They don't really like the Vikings, but they have to work with them. There's a lot of lore potential there. I thought that was really neat. I like the sword. I love big swords, okay? Big swords are kind of my thing. I like them because I'm a big guy, okay? And I like big swords, all right? You know what I'm saying? I love that. I thought that the design was cool. A lot of the armor sets were cool. The sword looked cool. It was pretty neat. And I'll admit, I liked the kind of unique aspect they brought with this dual fighting stance thing. You got a defensive stance which focuses on defense and crushing counters, then you got an offensive stance which focuses on just basically attacking with no defense in mind. It was neat. I was like, this is kind of a cool idea, and we see that style being implemented in new heroes, kind of like Shaolin with their key stance, or Ocelotl with their stealth stance, you know? There's some stuff there, and we got to thank Highlander for bringing some of that to us. But over time, as the game has evolved and I've played it more and more and started to get an appreciation for all the different characters and their fighting styles, I have learned something, and it is this. I don't like Highlander anymore. There's a lot there that I just do not like. Now, let me explain my position. First of all, let me say this. I think that Highlander, in comparison to a lot of the other characters, feels really clunky. He feels really clunky, even compared to characters like Shugoki, who just swings like a really bad baseball player with his club. Even Shugoki has some kind of fluid circular motion in the way he does his heavies and lights. With Highlander, I feel like he is just swinging and dragging his sword around sometimes. I feel like it's almost like he's carrying around a huge slab of metal that is just not meant for him. And I really thought about this the other day when I was playing the April Fool's event where they did the switcheroo, and when you pick Centurion, you actually come out as a Highlander fighting like Centurion, and it hit me. I liked the way Highlander moved when he was having Centurion fighting style. Imagine if you gave Highlander a smaller blade or something that was more fitting to his body. He could actually move and fight pretty cool. Imagine that, a Scottish warrior running around with an actual normal-sized sword or shield or pickaxe or something. That would actually be really neat. That would actually look really cool, and he would move very nice, and with a big muscled body like that, he could probably do some devastating stuff. But we have this greatsword that seems to weigh a ton. And as someone who's hefted a greatsword before, yeah, they're hefty. They're a little heavy, but they're not that heavy. They're not as heavy as what Highlander seems to be doing, because Highlander just, he always sounds like, when he swings it, you know? And I'm kind of like, it's not quite that heavy, bruh. And now you could wield it pretty easily, especially with arms as thick as yours. I think you could work it out. But regardless of that, the other problem that I have with it is, leaving aside the clunky nature, and he just moves so clunky, it's a little weird. I think that, you know what, no, I'm not going to move on from that yet. I've still got more to say about that. With so many characters who also have big weapons, you know, like Lawbringer with his poleaxe, or Warden with his longsword, Warmonger with his Zweihander, or, you know, Zanhu with their Wanda, with Shugoki with the Kanabo. You know, these are some big cumbersome weapons, but even these heroes make them look natural when they move. With Highlander, it doesn't seem quite as natural. There are moments where I feel like, is there any technique? Sometimes I feel like when Highlander moves, it's almost like, there's no technique here. You're just kind of swinging for the fences. And I don't know, that doesn't seem right. Highlander struck me as more of a warrior, not just a barbarian. You know what I'm saying? Or maybe I'm the only one who thinks that. Maybe you all see something different there. Okay, but that's aesthetics. And you may say, Raven, we don't care about aesthetics. Okay, sure, fine. Let's talk about gameplay then. Now, I'm probably the last person you want to hear this from, but I'm not a big fan of his gameplay. Here's the reason why. I think that every time I fight a Highlander, you get three kinds. You get three kinds of people when you fight a Highlander. Number one, you get the newbies, who are still figuring out how to differentiate between the defensive and offensive stance, where they kind of move between them and just kind of swing their unblockable heavies constantly, not sure, just hoping that they get a hit. You get those. Two, you get the defensive stance counterattackers. Basically, their whole game plan is to throw nothing but light, heavy, because they're hoping their lights will catch you with a crushing counter, and then they can throw a hyper armor heavy and maybe do some damage to you. I see those a lot. And then you get your offensive stance gods. These people who just automatically go in offensive stance, will dodge out of the way of anything you throw at them, kick you into oblivion, hit you with that unblockable, dodge you again, grab you, throw you to the ground. They're the ones who do the taunting before they hit you. Like, they are just gods of the offensive stance. And I run into quite a few of them. And here's the thing. I can't do what they do, all right? I am so bad at that kind of play style. Now, many of you would say, well, Raven, that's a skill issue. And I agree with you. I actually agree. That is a skill issue. I'm not as good at playing Highlander as these people. And though I have tried many times to learn the tricks and skills of the Highlander, figure out how to play them better, figure out how to do these cool dodges and mix-ups and taunts and then grabs and then, all these, I've tried. And I often mess up. I often screw up and I end up getting destroyed because I try to mimic what I see. And you might say, well, then get good, bro. Like, yeah, absolutely. I should get good at Highlander. I should learn to get good. But then I look at characters like Shugoki and Hitakiri. Think about what they do for a second. Many people accuse them of being the Unga Bunga playstyle, the no IQ playstyle, focused on just swinging your heavies and lights, knowing that the hyper armor is going to protect you, right? Absolutely. But notice the difference there. These characters are so easy to pick up because they don't sacrifice defense for offense. They get really strong offensive capabilities, but don't sacrifice that defense. Warlord's the same way with that hyper armor and his crushing counter. They never have to say, all right, I'm going to go offensive, but that means that my defense is going to lack. No. They don't have to do that. Most characters don't have to trade one for the other. Highlander does. If Highlander focuses on his defensive stance, he has to turtle unless he knows that he can outwit someone with his crushing counters and his slow-timed heavies. Or he can go offensive stance and just focus entirely on offense, but sacrifice all defensive capability. In order to do that, that requires a lot of time, energy, and skill. So if anything, I'm envious of those top-tier Highlander players who have mastered those abilities. I haven't. But I think that's the reason people are more quick to pick up on Hitakiri or Shugoki or Griffin or Warlord, because these characters don't have to make that same trade. They don't have to say, all right, I'm going to switch to full offensive capability and sacrifice my defense. Never have to make that trade. They've got both. Now, you might say, well, that's why we hate Shugoki and Hitakiri, because they don't have to make that trade. Fair enough. That is your prerogative, and I can kind of see the point there, too. And I'll make videos on Hitakiri and Shugoki in the future, but right now I'm focusing on Highlander, and I think the problem I have here is Highlander moves very clunky. He feels very off to me. The stances, while they're definitely there, I feel like they don't work in tandem very well. I feel like there's an oddity in the way he does dodge heavies, which doesn't always make sense. I feel like a lot of what comes down to Highlander is I'm not sure I really quite get a feel for what he is and where he stands. And I'm sure someone's going to come to the comments and say that's pretty weak rationale, Raven. And maybe it is. Maybe it is. But for me, I'm not a huge fan of Highlander. Now, I think there are 3 things they could do to fix this for me. Like, there are 3 things they could do that could make me like Highlander more. The first is, I'm not sure, but I feel like you need to find some way to help out his defensive stance so that it's more viable, so that people who don't want to focus on that offensive stance can use it more. Like, maybe, I don't know. Like, again, I'm not an expert on these things. I think one thing they need to do is make it so that you can't just rely on crushing counters, or maybe adjust the timing of his heavies, or maybe make it so that you have a different way to go into his offensive stance. There's got to be some change to the defensive stance so that those offensive gods don't just stay there and do all that dodging nonsense, which drives me crazy. The second thing we could do is, and I'll be honest here, this is going to sound weird, I don't like the grab that they do. I mean, I know it's a part of their kit, but in their offensive stance, they can feint out of a heavy or a kick and do a grab and throw you to the ground. I don't like that. I feel like if you got rid of that and just made it so that you could feint your kick, I would be okay with that. I know there are going to be a lot of people who don't agree with that, a lot of people who don't like that. That's fine. You don't have to agree with me, but that's just my take. I think you could get rid of that, and I think it would be fine. Because, I mean, why would you grab them? Just kick them or slash them. And that would be my thought. And then third, make a female Highlander. That would be what really got me into it, okay? Because get me a female Scottish mommy, all right? That would be very happy. I'd like to see her blow on some bagpipes, if you know what I'm saying. And that's the thing, you know, it really comes down to personal preference for me. And again, if you like Highlander, great. I am really, really glad you do. But for me, Highlander moves very clunky, very awkwardly. I'm not a fan of their style, their movement. It feels like there are just some problems there. And you know why I think this? Because Highlander keeps being brought up in testing grounds again and again and again. And I don't think it's because they don't know, and I don't think it's because they don't care about him. I think it's because they don't know what to do with him to make him fit everyone's cup of tea. There are some people who think he's perfect the way he is. There are some people who think his offensive stance needs work. There are some people who think his defensive stance needs work. There's some people who think he needs a feintable kick. There's some people who think he needs better dodge attacks. There are some people who think he needs new ways to go on offensive stance. Everyone's arguing about Highlander, and I think the reason why is because he's such a lopsided hero. You don't get a real sense of what he's trying to be. Is he like Shugoki and Hitakiri, where he's just swing your heavies? Or is he more like Shinobi, where he requires a lot of time, skill, and effort to master? I feel like they're trying to go for both, and that's why a lot of people are scared to pick him up. But again, that is my perspective. That is just where I stand on it. And if you disagree, that's fine. Just be respectful about it. If you do agree, awesome. Glad you do. Let me know what you think down in the comment sections. Do you like Highlander? What do you like about them? Do you not like Highlander? What do you dislike about them? What could they do to fix Highlander in your eyes? Let me know. Love to hear your thoughts with respect, always. And as always, guys, I'll see you in my next video. Take care.